Thank you very much for listening to this talk on the coming Shabbos of Tazria, that we read the Sedra of Tazria. It's also going to be a bumper Shabbos of Sifrei Torah. We have three Sifrei Torah, three Torah scrolls being taken out of the Ark this coming Shabbos, as it is Shabbos Rosh Chodesh, the first day of the new month of Nisan, and also Parashas HaChodesh, the special reading that we read the other Shabbos before, or the Shabbos of Rosh Chodesh Nisan, which as we're really blowing the heralds for the coming of Pesach, and as we go through the preparations for Pesach, and a lot of them are very physical preparations, at all times of our history, and today that translates in different ways, but we're still leading up to Pesach. And I think that we think of perhaps these sedras of Vayikra Teras Kohanim, as it's also called, the law of the priests, as involving sacrifice. I mustn't say that word. Involving carbonot, involving the offerings that we bring to get closer to Hashem, involving the Mishkan, the tabernacle, the Beis Hamikdash, the temple, and perhaps in our lives we might feel that the very intricate laws pertaining to those are not relevant to us. But I would go so far as to say that in this week's Sedra we find the themes of life and death and coming close to Hashem converging in a very deep and meaningful way that translates through the generations, through the years, and there are so many messages that are as pertinent to us today. And as with everything in the Torah, it is eternally relevant, and it's for us to find that and translate it into our circumstances, into our lives. And the first, I think that one aspect combines life, death, coming close to Hashem. I think that the common denominator, the common characteristic that we really need to work on is humility. And that we find in the Rashi on chapter 12, verse 2. Daber el bnei Yisrael, speak to the children of Israel, Lema, saying, Isha ki Tazria, a woman who conceives the Yolda and gives birth, Zacha, to a male, V'tama shivas yomim, she will be tame for 7 days, Kimei nidas dosa, as during the days of her menstrual period, Titma, she shall be tame. And in this theme of life, death, and getting close to Hashem, we find the two concepts of tahor and tameh. I would really call them untranslatables or unsatisfactorily translated, because this concept of clean and unclean, in brackets dirty, pure and impure, again, I think that they carry certain nuances that are actually not in the words tameh and tahor, tahor and tameh. So I think we should really just think about them as tahor and tameh and get inside of what that means. And the opening Rashi points out, linking the contents of this week's Sedra of Tazria with the Sedra that we read last week, Shemini, and especially the end of that Sedra, which talks about the laws of kashrut in food, and talks about the animals which are tameh and tahor. The animals which are tameh we cannot eat, and the animals that are tahor we can eat, and the specific signs that we find that will define whether an animal is classified as tahor or tameh. And just as with everything, so many different layers. It's not just a zoology textbook talking about all these animal characteristics. The Medrash in the Rashi today, and we'll just look at it a moment, says, Omar Rabbi Simlai. Rabbi Simlai said, Kashem sheyetziroso shel Adam, just as the creation of man happened, Acha kol behema chaya va'ov, after all cattle, beasts, and fowl, b'maaseh bereshis, in the Torah's account of the act of creation, kach Toraso nisparsha, so the law, his Torah, the law of man, and what is going to constitute tameh and tahor as far as a human is concerned, comes acha Toras behemas chaya va'ov, after the law of cattle, wild beast, and fowl. And the Medrash says that when we look at the order of creation, we see that humans were created on the sixth day of creation, on Friday, and shortly before Shabbos came in, and everything else on the world stage had already been put there. Everything was first. So the Medrash says, if a man is worthy, if humans are worthy, they are the apex of creation. They are what achron choviv, we say. This phrase translates as what comes last is most beloved. As you know, the last but not least equivalent is a little bit more patronizing, but this is that really as the last thing, that everything else was ready, everything else is for the benefit of human beings. And that includes the animal kingdom, the vegetable, the miracles and magnificence of the universe are there for human benefit, not for human abuse, not to make humans arrogant and to think that they are superior intrinsically. But yes, we have been given superior qualities by Hashem, but that comes with responsibility to use them in a way that is for the benefit of everything around us, to respect the myriad details of Hashem's creation, never to think that it is ours to destroy, it is ours to use in an inappropriate way. So this order of creation depends on whether humans are worthy, whether they are considered the apex, the pinnacle of creation, or whether we are reminded, Yotush Kadamcha. The Medrash says, Yotush, which is a gnat or a mosquito, the tiniest creature that we might, in our deluded way, think is insignificant. Everything that Hashem creates is there for a reason, is there for a purpose. And the midah of humility, the character trait of humility is ingrained in this medrash, to say that just like the laws that we are going to read in this week's Sedra pertaining to tahar and tameh, the situations which will make humans either tahar or tameh, but that we are reminded that the laws of the animal tahar and tameh came before us, and we need to, in order to earn our position as superior in inverted commas, we need to behave in a superior way. And so this is the opening foundation to the concepts, to the laws that we are going to find in this week's Sedra, and perennially relevant. We see that perhaps the pendulum has swung completely in the other direction from a time where perhaps it was with animals, treatment of animals or treatment of the environment. People were behaving in such a way that they were being destructive or being cruel gratuitously. And now we would say perhaps it's gone the opposite, that the environment or animal welfare is sometimes given greater importance than what happens to people and how we care about people. So as with everything, the Torah is giving us the perfect balance. We need to know that we have to earn our position as top of the food chain with our behavior, with our attitudes. And another beautiful way of thinking it is that Hashem gives this to us as a gift. Everything around us is a gift. And it was once phrased in such a way, we do not inherit the earth, we bequeath it to the future generation. So it's this being mindful of what we are using, how we are using, and using it in a way that is going to respect it and preserve it. But equally remember that the world was created for human beings. When they are worthy, when they behave appropriately, they are the apex of creation. But this quality of humility is, I think, the significant foundation that runs through tahor and tameh. And I said at the beginning, life and death and coming close to Hashem. And the opening laws in the Sedra of Tazria talk about a woman who has given birth. And we are blessed that we live in a time where, thank God, medical advances and other conditions in certain parts of the world, and this is not something that we can take for granted, even in this time. In other parts of the world, this is not the case. But thank God, it is very rare to hear of a woman dying in childbirth. And certainly, until recent history, that was not the case. And I would even point to events in this week's paper that talks about the NHS trusts in Shrewsbury, that for a variety of reasons, there were maternal deaths and deaths of babies. I think they were talking about 200 babies who died because of various attitudes and negligence, lack of care in these particular hospitals over a period of about 20 years. And we have to confront the reality, even today, even in the so-called Western world, with all its advances, that childbirth remains a time that is dangerous for mother and baby, dangerous to the point of life-threatening. And the fact that a woman emerges, thank God, intact, with her baby intact and complete, is a miracle. And we will find the themes of the Sedra, especially the childbirth that we begin with, the woman bring the various offerings after she has given birth to her baby. And then we progress after dealing in this section with the laws of the woman, and also bris milah, the circumcision of the baby boy at 8 days old. And then we move on to the affliction, the nega of tsaras. So in other words, that is, I would say, inaccurately translated as leprosy, so we'll refer to it as tsaras. But this is the skin affliction that was identified by the Kohen. It is not a medical condition. It is not a medical diagnosis, so therefore we cannot really call it by a physical affliction, by a medical term. But this was a certain blemish on the skin that was defined as tsaras by the priest, by the Kohen, and if the blemish met certain requirements and was called tsaras, then the person would be tameh. This state of not being able to bring a korban, not being able to go to, as it was in the wilderness, to the Mishkan, and in the time of the Beit HaMikdash to the Beit HaMikdash, he would have to be 7 days. The person would have to be 7 days outside of the encampment, and as with everything, way ahead of its time, especially during Corona, when we were reading of the isolation, and I think better able to identify with this consequence that required the removal of whoever had tsaras away from the community, away from the company and the support of everybody around them, and how challenging, how we are social creatures, and how this was such a very serious consequence. And this nega of tsaras is associated with motzi ra, motzo ra, and we hear the words motzi ra within the word motzo ra, and this has come to be associated with lashon hara, with any derogatory speech or action or insinuation. I mean, we tend to think of it as lashon, a tongue, hara, of evil, but it actually is even broader than that. Anything that is, in an insinuating way, mocking somebody. And this is, again, linking up with the humility that we require as people, as human beings, because it's only really if you think that you are above somebody that you would think that you have the right, in inverted commas, to speak in a derogatory way about them. And it is really important to remember that this is not only about untrue speech, it's about anything that is negative. And there are so many things that we can say that don't fall within the category. And it is a question, as with much of stamina, and this is well within the heading of spiritual stamina, but we can fill our conversation, our lives, with wonderfully interesting, relevant things that are not derogatory about another person, and extending that to perhaps snide jokes or sarcastic remarks, again, may be said to the person's face, that we can desist from making. And this concept finds its presence in this week's Sedra of Tazria. Going back to this concept of life and death, so we see how the fact that somebody has been exposed to a life and death situation, whether it is the woman who has just given birth, or whether it is the Metzora, and the nega, the particular skin blemish, was reminiscent of dead skin. So this is also how death is creeping in to the particular conditions or situations that are described in this week's Sedra. And what is it that makes it inappropriate in these situations to be able to bring a korban, to be able to come to the precincts of the Mishkan or to the Bet HaMikdash? And Rabbi Sachs Zatzal writes that when we come close to Hashem, when we bring a korban, we are approaching the eternal and the infinite. And when we have a brush with mortality, then that jars. That is something that will preclude us from being able to have the channels of our spiritual antennae flowing in an unblocked way. And we need to draw back. We need to let that moment pass. We need to process it, because even though we're never going to change the reality that we are finite, and everything physical will tend to decay, but in order to be able to get into the right spiritual mindset, we can't have had an immediate and intense brush with a death-like situation. And the Av Tuma, the principal heading of Tuma, is a dead body. And I think that when we consider death, it is the ultimate state of lack of potential. Somebody who has passed away, we had last week the passing, the week before last actually, of Harav Chaim Kanievsky Zatzal, very great sage of our time, and his accomplishments were legendary. He was blessed to live a long and full life. I believe he was 94 or 96 years old, but as somebody pointed out to me, in this case, the magnitude of the loss was not dwarfed by the fact that he was blessed with such long years, because his influence on so many people was so profound, and he lived in the most simple of ways, and he was just so focused on the study of Torah, on giving people blessings, and on sharing that wisdom and truth of Torah as widely as he could. And you look at pictures of his Levaya that I don't recall seeing such crowds coming to honor this exceptional man. But at this point, and this is one of the, I think the Rabbi Ponovich Yeshiva pointed out in words that I found almost shocking, his hashpa'ah, his influence is no more. And I thought, how can he say that? Because his influence continues in the Torah that he taught, in the Torah that he learned. It continues to have an influence. But the truth is that he can no longer learn more, do more. And this is the ultimate state of lack of potential. And while we are alive, we need to realize, to connect to our potential and really use it to its fullest, achieve everything that we possibly can with our potential. And so when we have in this week's Sedra the common denominators of a woman who has just had a brush with death, even though she is bringing new life into the world. And we might question, how comes this is in the same category? So that is a physical event that she has gone through, reminding her in a very upfront way about her mortality. So that is going to affect how she will come to Hashem, and she needs to have this time elapse. And then we have the Metzora, who perhaps with his words has been destructive and death-like, and uniquely among all the prohibitions, the prohibition of Lashon Hara, the prohibition against speaking in a derogatory way, acting in a derogatory way towards any person, affects three people. Affects the person who speaks, the person who listens, and the person about whom it is spoken. And so this is also considered death-like. And as a result, the person who is speaking in this way, behaving in this way, has to not only be barred from the precincts of the Mishkan, from the tabernacle, from the Bet HaMikdash, from the temple, but also has to withdraw from the whole of society, because these words, these negative words, these derogatory words and actions cause breakup and withdrawal within society. And we are working towards Achdus, we are working towards oneness and unity. And the Metzora has been responsible for splintering, for shattering that unity. And as a result, this is a death-like experience. And the Gemara goes as far as to say that Metzora Choshuv Kames, that somebody who is classified as a Metzora is considered as if he were dead. And again, this is profoundly shocking, but it links up to this idea of life, death, and closeness to Hashem. And how when we are alive, when we are blessed with the gift of life, then we want to use every opportunity we possibly can to draw near to Hashem. In the times of the Sedra of Tazria, in the times of the temple, that meant that we could actually bring a korban. In the times today that we live in, it means that our closeness to Hashem manifests in different ways. It manifests in the avodah shebalev, in our davening, in the way we interact with other people, and very specifically the way, as far as the Metzora is concerned, the way not to speak about other people, and how we need to refine our speech to such a level that if something does come out of our mouth, then we are going to have that image, and something comes out of our mouth that is derogatory about another person, we are going to have that image of this dead skin affliction. And again, uniquely, besides applying to three people, Soras could be found on a human, on a garment, and on a house. And Soras is something that nobody is too great that they would think, I can't possibly have to pay the penalty of being a Metzora, because we see that both Moshe Rabbeinu and Miriam were afflicted with Soras. Moshe Rabbeinu in Shemos, when he is trying not to be chosen to go to Paro to be the messenger of Hashem, to tell Paro to set the Jewish people free. And one of the things that Moshe Rabbeinu says as he's saying to Hashem, please don't choose me, is the people won't listen to me. And what happens is Hashem gives him certain signs, and one is the stick that becomes a snake. And the second one, this is Shemos chapter 4, verse 6, Vayoma Hashem lo, and Hashem said further to him, Haveno yodcha b'chekecha, put your hand into your breast, Vayove yodo b'cheko, and he brought his hand to his breast, Vayetzia And she brought it out, Vehine Yodo Mitzoraas Kasholek, and behold, his hand was Mitzoraas like snow, and this sort of white dead skin. And the Medrash says that the Moshe Rabbeinu says the people won't believe me, and that was considered lashon hara against the Jewish people. And Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, they are maminim b'nei aminim. They are believers, the sons of believers, the children of believers. And this is really castigating Moshe Rabbeinu for thinking that they would not believe. That's how fine that line of not being derogatory about other people will extend to, and how Moshe Rabbeinu, our greatest leader, the greatest human being, that even he was susceptible and had to face this consequence of tzaras. And with Miriam as well, when she questioned the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu is not with his wife, and everybody else could be a prophet and still live with their spouses. And again, that was considered lashon hara, and she was afflicted with tzaras, and she had to wait for 7 days, and the people waited with her while this period elapsed. And so we come back to the concept that what we're reading about in the Sedra of Tazria is really essential to us at all times, and we can learn from the historical experience and extrapolate it to the times that we live in, as with all of the Torah, and especially those sections of the Torah that we might not feel so connected to. And so I think that the word korban, which means coming close, is really that message that is going to give us the right mindset and enable us to read these words and see how we can apply them to ourselves today. Wishing everybody a very good Chodesh and a very good Shabbos, and thank you very much for listening.